Alrighty, welcome into the live desk. I'm Janae Hancock, and welcome into another week of news you can use. As you can see here, I am joined by Josh Planos with the Better Business Bureau. Josh, before we jump into everything, how's it going? I know we all had a very active weekend of weather.
Yeah, still standing, Janae. Very,
Yeah,
very grateful that the storms avoided our home, but certainly for many others, this is a really, really challenging time. So,
yeah.
ready to help in the ways that we can, but
Hmm.
uh, it's going to be a consistently erratic weather season for
Right.
the foreseeable future. So.
And I know we touched on it just a little bit, but really this is just the beginning. But you said that this is a challenging time. It's also a time of transition, as we know that a lot of college students are going to be moving out and moving into different places. People will start accepting new jobs and moving to new cities. In May, as we enter May on Wednesday, it actually marks the beginning of a busy travel time for moving into different places in lives. So that means it's also a busy time for scams as well. So let's talk a little bit more about that, Josh. And what exactly does that mean? Does that mean that there are scammers posing as moving companies?
Yeah, so this is the busiest time in the country for moving. In 1997, they designated this month National Moving Month. The vast majority of folks are interested in moving when the weather changes and when it's a little bit sunnier outside. So this is a fantastic time to do your moving, but you want to do it as safely as possible. We've seen a number of reports, both locally and nationwide, that involve things like consumers receiving a quote, paying a deposit, and then the movers never show up, or someone is impersonating a legitimate moving company. The company doesn't exist in the first place, and they're doing some digital targeting, especially on social media. In some cases, we've heard of movers just outright withholding the belongings of someone until they make good on payments, which is of course not a reasonable business practice to engage in. So we do see outright scams. We see disreputable organizational, business practices, and kind of everything in between. But you want to make sure that again, you're navigating this process as safely as possible. It's going to be stressful pretty much no matter what you do. But if you do stack the layers of security that we talk about so often, Janae, the process can be as smooth as possible.
And, this is already, when you're moving, it's already a stressful time. So to add on to that stress and have to consider that you might be getting scammed and kind of watch out for that, it just adds on to the stress. Now, how much do people typically lose in these situations?
Yeah, in some cases we're talking about a couple $100. In some cases we're talking about a couple thousand, right? If it kind of depends on the amount of belongings that you have, where you're going. If you're crossing state lines, right, you need certain licenses to be able to cross a state border, and so you want to make sure that again you have everything laid out nice and neat in writing, just like you would if you were going to remodel your kitchen or take out a loan to do some work in the backyard. You want to make sure everything is itemized. It's very easy for contractors and for businesses and also for scammers to paint this very broad brush of what the project will actually entail. And, under the premise that they'll fill in the details later, you want those details up front as quickly as possible. So getting that all itemized and nice and written out in advance is a really good way to avoid a lot of what is ultimately reported to us.
And Josh, you say that we have seen an increase across the nation and here locally. Do you happen to have a number?
So I can tell you that more than $100,000 has been lost to moving scams pretty much each of the past few years, and that's just what's reported, right? A lot. We mentioned that kind of demarcation line between what's a scam and what's a complaint of a business. We take that very seriously, but in some cases, we're working as hard as we can to not double count figures. But this is something that we saw a 4% increase from 2022 versus 2021. But this is something that is common, right? May to August is typically a busy season for all moving companies, and that's where the vast majority of the complaints and the scam reports come in. Scammers are really good at knowing what the seasonality of certain industries looks like, and they will target folks based on that information, such that they know if they cast a wide net between May and August, they're 5% more likely to get an enormous payout. So you want to make sure that there are a lot of reputable companies out there, but you want to make sure you're working with one of those and not falling for, say, a too good to be true offer.
And definitely reading the reviews. I know I do that all the time, constantly. And I think you touched on something important, knowing the difference between a complaint and a scam. That's also something to look out for. Let's talk about the signs. Let's dive a little bit deeper into those as well.
Yeah, so unusual requests. We talk a lot, Janae, about like unsolicited communication. A lot of the scams that are reported to us originated with somebody contacting you out of the blue or demanding unusual things, right? If you move just a handful of times in your life, it can be very challenging to know what is a realistic request from what's kind of an atypical one. An atypical one would be if a mover asks for an enormous down payment or a full payment in advance. Best practices is that you keep that information under 50%, so less than 50% advance payment. It depends on the business in question, but those full payments in advance requests are typical of a fraudulent business. You want to make sure that, again, everything is itemized. So if somebody swoops in, gives you a price, and doesn't provide anything in writing, that is a real concern. If that company is not accredited with the Better Business Bureau, another sign to look for, not least of which, because you cannot be a BBB accredited business unless you are appropriately licensed. That might seem like a small thing, but when you have all of your possessions in the hands of someone who isn't licensed, I can tell you that is the thing you want most, right? Is the person who is actually doing right by you, by your business, and by your items and belongings. And then another just kind of general best practice that we would recommend is to keep an inventory of your belongings. We do occasionally hear from companies that just kind of leave with a box of your possessions. And one way to really get to the bottom of whether or not that's going to happen is by itemizing everything. And I know a lot of folks just really want to fast track the moving process and maybe don't want to write down everything. But this is also a good way to see whether or not you want to move those items or if they can be donated or left behind.
And as always, to report scams and to read up on these companies that you may be questioning, they can go to the BBB website. Is that correct?
It is. We have an entire moving HQ, which handles probably all the information you would want to know about moving and maybe some that you didn't know you might need. But it's a really good place to, again, get yourself a game plan, a blueprint to follow, and what to avoid to ensure that what is a very stressful process can be as stress-free as possible.
A game plan as you prepare to pack those bags and those boxes ahead of National Moving Month next month during the month of May. So thank you so much, Josh, for joining me here at the live desk. And I will talk to you next Monday for news you can use. Have a great rest of your week, everyone.